Corvette as your first car. This is something I get asked quite often, in kind of the same vein as the video I made a few days ago. And I thought, hey, might as well make a video and address it so I can just forward you to this video. So you're 17, 18, maybe 19-year-old, etc. and you want to get a Corvette as your first car. Is this a good idea? Now there's a lot of factors that go into this. For example, my first car when I was 16, I got a 1989 Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe, which is a kind of hot rod, if you will. Not quite Corvette status, but it's quick enough to get me into trouble, you know what I mean? It had its fair share of issues and definitely got my feet wet working on cars. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole, are you too young to drive a Corvette? My opinion is, if you're ambitious enough to get a Corvette at a younger age, be it C3, C4, C5, etc., good on you, you know? There's much worse things kids can do with their time, if that makes sense. Some people argue till they're blue in the face that a teenager should not own a Corvette. I'm not your moral compass, I'm just some dude on the internet talking on YouTube, you know what I mean? But I'll give you some tips and pointers of what you should know about owning a Corvette as your first car. I mean, to be honest, anyone can act like a freaking idiot in any car, you know what I mean? So I'm not gonna call you out for being younger or having a Corvette, that's stupid. But here's a few things I'm gonna cover in this video. Your budget and the condition of Corvette you wanna get, maintenance, storage, and insurance. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume you're right out of high school, or maybe you're still in high school, and you got a budget of about $10,000. Now, Corvette prices across the board are kind of inflated. 2 years ago, this would have been a much easier feat, somewhat of a much younger age to pull off, but nonetheless, it's still doable. A C3, you can pull one of those for like 5 grand. A clapped out C5, 8 or 9 grand. You can still find a good example of C5 for about 10 grand. You can get a really cherry C4 Corvette for 9, 10K. Now, an affordable low mileage C4 can be kind of a double-edged sword, and we'll get to that later in maintenance. My advice when you're picking a Corvette, I would say spend 80% of your budget on the car, leave 20% for any immediate repairs the car may need, such as a tune-up or any other little things you're gonna need to get the car roadworthy. Now, if you're not mechanically inclined yet, but you love Corvettes, there's no shame in taking someone with you to get your first car that may be a Corvette. Even if you're older and you're not really sure about cars, there's no shame in asking someone that you know about cars to go with you to look at it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just don't get screwed, and a lot of buyers will see you're a young kid, they'll take advantage of you. Furthermore, a lot of Corvette owners, when selling their car, they don't like test drives. However, if they're really adamant about not letting you drive the car, especially because you're younger, ask them to take you for a ride. And after the ride, look at all of the parameters and readings on the car, such as coolant temperature, engine temperature, and just feel overall how the car feels. You can get a good idea of how the car feels just by riding it, not necessarily driving it, if that makes sense. And of course, you need to decide if this is going to be a turnkey car, meaning you're going to go pick it up and then you plan on just driving it with no real work done to it, or you want kind of a project situation. If you want more of a project situation, we'll get into that more during the maintenance segment of this. All right, and that leads us into maintenance. Now, even though by and large Corvettes are a pretty reliable car depending on the platform, it's not going to be as reliable as, let's say, a 5-year-old Honda or a Toyota that you'll spend the same amount of money on, so be cognizant of that. After all, it's going to be a 20-plus-year-old car, most likely. However, if you're remotely mechanically inclined and ambitious, there's endless amount of resources on forums, Facebook groups, YouTube, Google itself, articles that can get you through almost any repair, really. Now, being this age and wanting a Corvette, I'm going to assume you're an automotive enthusiast, and like I said before, you're really ambitious. However, there's going to be times where you simply won't have the resources or the time to work on a project. Replace a head, transmission work, clutch job. Those are things your average teenager is not going to have, assuming living on your own, readily available access to a garage, etc. And you would be stuck sometimes taking it to your local automotive shop. Don't take it to the dealer, they're gonna screw you, but taking it to a locally trusted shop, it's not gonna be cheap. So always have Corvette fund money set aside, if that makes sense. And yeah, most young people just starting out of high school, college, or in college rather, or just starting a trade in life, you're gonna be kind of short on funds. Everyone was there. So that could be an added stress that you might not need and something to consider when thinking about buying a Corvette. And even if you can fix a lot of the problems, some of the parts themselves can add up rather quickly. Furthermore, for maintenance, you got to think about where you're going to work on this. Chances are you're not a homeowner with a 2-car garage. Chances are. I mean, maybe you do, and you're doing really good for yourself, which is awesome, but something to think about. I remember when I was 21, I bought my first Corvette. It was a 95 Corvette. Something like 120,000 miles on it. I was in the Navy, living in the barracks. The car needed some love. It needed some suspension work, some steering work, and I just simply didn't have the time. At the time, I was working on a submarine. It keeps you busy. Typically, bases have an auto body shop, but that thing was always packed, or it was at the time. Unfortunately, long story short, I ended up trading it in for a 2004 350Z. I thought they were cool. So it just sucked. I love that car, and I know if I had room to work on it, I probably would still have that car, or at least had it for a lot longer than what I did have it for. Fun little car. So maintenance kind of ties right into my next segment, which is storage for your Corvette. All right, so you found the perfect Corvette. Everything checks out. It's exactly what you want. You pull the trigger on it, you got it. Now, where are you going to keep the damn thing? You're going to keep it outside? That's fine. You can keep it outside in the elements. And contrary to popular belief, Corvettes do not melt in the rain, believe it or not. I do recommend, though, if you're going to leave it outside for an extended period of time, to get a car cover for it. They're not terribly expensive. Now, storage is closely correlated to maintenance. Let's say you have some kind of a major repair you got to do, and that might require you having the Corvette up on jacks for overnight, a couple days, maybe a week. That might make you kind of worrisome leaving it outside in that condition. You know, thieves, some people are just douchebags. Your neighbors might not really appreciate it depending on where you live. I highly recommend finding a good place to where you can do maintenance or store it if you need to before you buy it. It's going to make your life a lot easier down the road, trust me. All right, and lastly, real quick, insurance. I went over this briefly the other day, but I do want to reiterate because it's very applicable to this video. If you're under the age of 25, you're going to get screwed. That's just the way it is, and especially if you're a male. I mean, so much for equality, you know what I mean? But if you're a boy under 25, you get screwed. You have cool parents, see if they'll keep you under their insurance wing as long as possible. Their rates will go up substantially, but it will save you money. So hopefully your parents are kind of cool. That's one route you can take. And especially if you're a teenager and have any kind of driving infractions, either a ticket or any kind of accident, it's gonna add to it. Even if you buy the car straight up with no loan, your insurance bill could be hundreds of dollars a month. That's something to think about on top of gas. If you are able to park your car in the garage, you will save a little bit on your insurance. Insurance companies do like when you are able to garage your car. But if you do manage to be a good, safe driver up until the age of 25, you will magically be endowed with cheaper insurance on your 25th birthday. Such an arbitrary number. I don't know where that came from, but 25 is the magic number in insurance world. So that's something to look forward to if you're a younger Corvette buyer, owner, thinking about buying, etc. Now, a lot of people will discourage a younger person from buying a Corvette, and even your peers might give you a hard time. Like, cool, does that come with an AARP membership? You know, it's revered as an old man's car still, you know what I mean? And to that, I say, fuck them. A lot of times it's just straight up jealousy that you have a hobby or because you have a Corvette, you know? It's a good thing to get into. And it can be an expensive hobby, but so is heroin. I'd rather be into Corvettes than hardcore drugs. That's just me. You know, Corvettes have resale value. Heroin doesn't. Well, unless you're like trafficking it. I'm not really sure how drugs work, but just stick to Corvettes. So there's that. Well, anyways, that's all I have for today, boys and girls. Hope you guys found this interesting. And I'll have another Corvette news segment coming down the pipeline soon. Yeah, hope you guys found this helpful. Enjoyed it, and I'll catch you sometime this weekend. Mark out.